guys and girls, and welcome to another episode of Kook Shed, my own little YouTube channel where I share tips and info and some reviews, all related to surfing and bodyboarding that hopefully are helpful to you. And today we are going to talk about the Firewire Sweet Potato 2.0, shaped by Dan Mann. Now, for those of you who might not be familiar, Dan came up with he's come up with a few variations of these potato models for Firewire. So we had the sweet potato, then the Potatonator, which was a combination of the sweet potato and the Dominator. That was a more performance sort of oriented one. Then we had the baked potato, which I've done a review on. We had a little chat about that. You can go check that one out in the previous posts. And then we had the twice baked, which I've also done a quick review on as well. So I've never had one of these sweet potatoes before, but the opportunity came up to grab this one. So I thought I'd give it a go, and then I could sort of give it a ride and let you guys know sort of where I'm at with the board. So these they're designed to be small wave boards. They pack in a huge amount of volume for such a small little shape. They're quite stubby. So you can see it's quite a stubby shape. This one's actually really big for what they are. They're not normally this big. You don't usually see them this big. You can really see it tapers from the wider points of the board right down, tapers down towards the tail. They're very thick, super thick. They hide a lot of volume in the center of the board, and then it drops off quite dramatically from up here on the deck. It drops off quite dramatically down to the rail, and I'm guessing that's to help the rails still be very performance oriented and maneuverable. So he's basically chucked all the volume in the center there, and then where the points of the rail are that need to turn the most often, that's where the rails are definitely they've definitely been rolled down to have a bit of bite, which they do. You've got a swallowtail on this one. So you've got a swallowtail here, and I really like the shape of these swallowtails with that curve on the inner line. That seems to work really well. They're on a lot of the Rob Machado swallowtails. You know how you can get the really pointy ones, the pointy swallowtails, which are sort of just as pointed on the inside as they are on the outside, or just as straight, I should say. Whereas I don't know why, but I just seem to like the way these turn when they've got that sort of curved inner line there. Now I'm guessing that he has put that tail in there like that design to counteract the width of the tail. Now in the baked potato review I did not long ago, I mentioned that the width of the tail might be an issue for some people. Now having that little swallowtail there sort of helps counteract the width. This is just from what I've picked up. Because when you go to turn, when you tilt the board and when you start turning, it seems to turn off one of the points more than the whole area of the tail, I guess. Because some of these fun boards have got quite rounded, wide tails. And I've noticed that this guy, Dan Mann, he tries lots of different ways to counteract those wide tails. Like on the baked potato, he's got little sort of tips. And I think he's trying to just make it turn a bit more easily. And I think that really works for these sort of boards. You can see probably from there that it's got a very low entry, so it doesn't have a lot of nose rocker in the front of the board, and that helps with getting into waves very easily. Remember, this has been designed for small, weak, mushy, powerless waves, so there's not really the need for a more extreme nose rocker, and that lower rocker point helps get into the waves easily, helps you paddle around. It's not resisting the water that's going underneath it as much. And the same with the tail. The tail doesn't have much rocker at all, so it's pretty much a very flat board. They paddle really well, I've got to say. They paddle like a much larger board. But when you get up on the wave, they handle really well, like a fun board, like a fun performance board, which is what you want. They're designed to maximise the amount of fun you can have in really crappy waves, basically. Construction, you've got helium construction. Now this is the newer helium construction. The earlier ones, like you'd see on the seasides and things like that, the earlier seasides, was a different sort, from what I can tell, it's a different sort of helium construction. The earlier ones were like a plastic moulded shell over the top. Whereas this seems like a different construction. You can, in the light, you can almost see like the rails sometimes, like the balsa. You can see actually, these have got balsa. We've got timber up the side, up the rails here, which is definitely a Firewire sort of thing. They've done a lot. There's no more stringer in the centre of the board with these ones. The stringers are basically hidden in the rails, and it's supposed to add a different sort of flex, and I like the feel of them. But anyway, I'm getting off track. You can sort of see in some areas, I don't think this light's going to show it up, but when I look at it in the light, you can sort of see through this sort of resin. It's whereas the other stuff you couldn't see through it. So I don't know whether they've just tweaked the construction a little bit. But yeah, this stuff is super light, really light. It's still very strong. This one hasn't had much use at all. I can see some little indentations here, so I don't know if it's as strong as the original helium. That's just me saying that. You guys might have a different opinion. But I think the earlier helium might be a touch tougher. But they're still tougher than a normal like epoxy board, I think, by far. So you've got a foam, like a EPS foam core, and then you've got this outer shell. And a lot of the Firewire modern stuff, they're composite shells, like they've got a few different layers of a few different types of resins and things, and that also adds to the flex and the feel of the board. And I've got to say, they do feel really nice underfoot. Because they're made for less than average, I guess, surf, or just average surf. Just be aware that this is a very light material. Some people prefer like a heavier material, like the TimberTech construction, or even PU, the traditional style of surfboard, for those bumpier days. Like I've found when it's mushy or small, sometimes it can be quite windy and windblown and bumpy. So some people might not like the the chatter that some of these lighter boards get on the bumps. That's just what I've found. This one doesn't seem to have it because it's so huge. It doesn't seem to have it as much, but yeah, you can get that with these lighter boards, and some people might not like that. Or even like when you get a really offshore day, when the wind's really strong, you can sort of get like chatter on the wave face. So that's just something to be aware of. Okay, now the bottom contours. So this guy Dan Mann, he's come up with some really interesting aggressive contours for his potato line of boards, and I've sort of been lucky enough to see those with the different models close up, and this one is no different. So he's basically got a very very sort of mellow entry here to let that water get in underneath. It's like a single concave, but then he's got this really pronounced sort of spine here. And I touched on this a little bit in the baked potato review. So if you got water coming underneath and then being split into two, it creates speed, because the water then has to rush to get it. It's compressed. It's compressed into the two sides of the spine, and that seems to help with the board's drive and speed. Now, one thing also that I think it is handy for, especially in these really wide boards, is that it helps with turning rail to rail, like that raised area here. You probably can't see it from there, I'm sorry, but you've got a really pronounced spine here, and that can help you tip the board a little more easily, and so it helps it become a bit more high performance, which is what this board was designed to sort of try and be in average conditions. So I really admire his constant effort to keep making these boards and trying out these bottom contours to help us all have fun. So yeah, pretty much that's it. It's got 5 fin options here, but for some reason, and he's even admitted it himself, most of his boards are designed to be ridden as a quad. You can ride it as a thruster, go nuts, but he seems to ride quads himself, and this board is designed, I believe, to be ridden best as a quad. Quad fin setups are great for weaker conditions as well. The water that we just talked about, it can really shoot through between those rear fins without the drag of that center fin, and it just helps that board have a little bit more get up and go. So yeah, once again, he's created a nice little small wave monster. Really handy for if you don't want to go up to a mile and you still want to be able to do shortboard turns and things like that. Fins. Now, I tried it as a quad with a full quad setup, like upright. They weren't keel fins or anything like that. And I just found it didn't have enough sort of release for me, because I was riding it in, because this board is just so big and it's made for really tiny conditions. I wanted a bit more release in the tail when I was doing turns out on really fat mushy faces. I sort of wanted it to slide a little bit, just to have a bit of fun. So I actually changed the rear fins, and I went and got little nubsters. The little nubsters, like in the, they're actually the rear quad fins from the Rob Machado keel setup that he sells with his Seaside. So I tried some little Seaside nubsters in the back, and that just changed it. It really had that release again, because like I said, these two tips of the swallowtail, they have that little bit more bite, and it was just a little bit harder for me to release this big board until I went down to the nubsters, and then I had a whole lot even more fun. It still went great as a quad. It was really drivey. Like in such small conditions, you can really get up and go on these things. They're awesome. But I just found at the end of the turn, I just wanted a little bit of looseness, a little bit of fun. So I went down to the little nubsters. So if that's something you would like as well to try, I highly recommend it, because it's a whole bunch of fun. So sizing. Now, I am coming straight out of the gates with this one and say I went too big. right? Because they punch so much weight, so much volume in there. Sorry, I didn't need to go this big, but this one just came up in this size. The opportunity came up to get it, so I grabbed it. But if I was going to walk into a shop tomorrow and order one, I probably wouldn't go this big. I'm not saying to go really small, but there's that much volume hidden in these boards that you don't need to go too big at all. So, you know, still like go 4 to 6 litres even up over your normal shortboard, your performance shortboard sort of average. But yeah, I think this was a little bit excessive for me. Like, I'm not super heavy, so yeah, just don't go oversized too much. Well, it depends on what you're after though. If you want something that's going to catch anything, you might have a really long, fat point break sort of wave that doesn't really have too much punch and it just peters along. Well, this thing would just go nuts. You would love it. So depends where you're surfing, how you plan on surfing it. But yeah, if I had to go again, I would I'd go a little bit smaller next time. It's just, yeah, it's a lot of board for such a small little package. So yeah, look, I hope this has been helpful to you if you're looking at getting one of these sweet potatoes. I found them to be great fun, really good fun, really good summer board, and all your mates are going to want to go because they're really addictive. Yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed this review, a little chat about the new 2.0 version of the sweet potato. And yeah, if you liked it, hit like. If you want to see more reviews and tips and things I come up with that I think might be helpful, just subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you next time here on Kook Shed. Thanks for dropping in. Catch ya.